Universal Fighting System is the name used to describe the legacy era of my favorite card game and a time frame containing some of the best memories of my life. Starting with the Penny Arcade Battle Box in early 2006 and ending with the Soul Calibur 4 Quest of Souls release in late 2009, this era of Universus laid the foundation for what would go on to be one of the best and longest running card games ever made. Now, 20 years later, the game still exists, but it's become something a bit different. Rulebook changes and new approaches to design philosophy have created a different arena to do combat in. Cards that have once warped formats, demanded power balancing, or even kind of forced entire format rotations are now just being slowly forgotten, until now at least. My name is Nick. This is Rival Stage Gaming. Let's go. Like I said, 20 years. 20 years is a long time to be playing this game, and it made me kind of want to go back and take a look at a lot of these cards. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to introduce a new generation of players to what the original's kind of stomping grounds are. And why? Well, that's kind of a quote from Mortal Kombat 3 that's been drained into my head, and that is, there is no knowledge that is not power. Understanding classics won't necessarily translate into better gameplay like one-to-one. However, it will kind of teach you to maybe look at cards differently or approach game plans or understand archetypes and what you will be kind of able to accomplish, what you'll be able to pull out of the game. The other thing too is I think it's a lot of fun. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to kind of go with the fun aspect and go with that itself. So the best way to introduce something or to someone is just to simply have them do it, which brings us to a couple of questions. How do we showcase these cards? How do we make it easy enough for players to actually enjoy them? And then how do we make sure that the experience overall is enjoyable while they kind of go through and take a look at all the cards that make up legacy era Universes? And for me, there's a lot of problems that need to be addressed. There's like a lot of cards in the format, and so the best way I think to kind of solve all the questions that I just had were to do a cube draft. And this is 100% inspired by Nick Reagan. Like, Nick Reagan has this awesome cube and it is fantastic, and it's so cool to see that the company supports him with that cube by like making an official sanctioned event, and that is so cool. So this is 100% stolen from Nick. Another great Nick. Great moms think alike, right? So the format allows me to pick and choose what I want. So in a cube, ideally you'll still have draft chaff, but you won't have draft chaff. And the best cards from the legacy era are all going to be jammed in there, but because of the inconsistency of the cube and just like the amount of like power that can overlap onto things, you won't necessarily have all the pieces to create these negative play environments. So that's a big reason why. The other one is that if it's a cube, like a physical cube, it's kind of like a no-brainer because you only need one copy of everything, especially a card game. We're looking at cards here now that are anywhere from 20 to 18, 17 years old at this point. So make sure you take a look at UVS Ultra. There's a lot of cool buttons on it. One of them is proxy. You can go ahead and think about that one. But let's go ahead and just hop into it right away. There's a lot to get through, so let's just do it. So first thing is to get the card pool sorted. Not the card pool, but the cube card pool. You know what I'm saying here. One of the cool things about Cube is that we get to show off everything from Legacy era, and I get to kind of pick and choose. And the cool thing about that is I get to show all the cool stuff, but eventually you kind of run out of space for everything. So you kind of have to set some limits for what you want to do with your cube, unless you're like really good at managing every card in it, which I am very much not. So I like to do exact numbers of things. That's why I have to worry about certain levels of variance. So the legacy era to me is any cards that were printed by the first two publishers of the games. The original printer, Sabertooth Games, and the second printer and publisher of the game, Fantasy Flight Games. So this is going to be kind of a spotlight cube with these two companies of this era. There's a lot of really cool retro cards. A lot of these cards interacted in early Jasco days, late Fantasy Flight Games days. But for this cube specifically, this is just going to kind of be a spotlight. So there's going to be no other cubes, no other cards from outside of these publishers. The other good thing to remember is that when Jasco kind of took over, a lot of other people had a handle or hand and say of what design was going to be like. So it definitely kind of changed things for the better, for the way better. But This is going to give us 29 releases in total in just under 4 years' time, by the way. And this is when like a booster set will come out alongside another booster set. Every single release of these releases had like they were in pairs for the most part. One card type to note in this is the split, which fuses two cards together. Those are kind of fun. We haven't really seen those since, or while we were in the thick of it for Sabertooth games for the most part here. This card pool does not include the Warhammer Age of Reckoning decks because they were never officially released. They were just kind of a promo thing. As well as promotional staff cards are not included because they just simply say on them they're not tournament legal. There are champion cards that existed in the game at this time, and they are the coolest prize in gaming, still are. However, they're not in the cube for right now. I'm kind of evaluating them to see which one makes the cut. There are some really cool ones like Matt Coles, Andrew Alexa, James Hadatu, the Wonderworld assets, Omar Chavez. Like, there's a lot of really cool champion cards, but it's just necessarily kind of seeing how they work. And because like even Matt Cole's got an errata, like that's how good of a champion card he was. So just got to make sure those are all good here. And there are, and speaking of champion cards, like there's a lot of promo cards. This game had a significant amount of promotional cards made and put out there. I'm actually like going through and looking through old archived like web pages and data and stuff from Fantasy Flight and Sabertooth Games and Wayback Machine and stuff, and I'm finding my friend Danny Shadow Dragon. She has made a bunch of lists for all this stuff on forums and everything like that, and it's been archived and saved to the internet forever, and so that has been a huge help. And also she taught me how to play the game, so you can thank her for all this cool archiving and unleashing me on this wonderful community and me turning it into an awful one. So one thing to remember about the legacy card pool that we'll be using is it is very much a product of its environment. Different designers, different rules, a lot of things have changed since the game originally came out. I recommend playing this cube with a lot of the modern Universus rules, like the newer Mulligan rule, that's a lot better. The extra card for player 2, that's good. Being allowed to look at cards at your momentum, that was like a hidden information thing that player couldn't, yeah, like it's much better now here. And there's most recently been a change to unique, and that's definitely something that I think is really better as well too. There's two specific keywords that kind of have been updated and kept up with for retro specifically. Those would be multiple and reversal. You can kind of use the modern retro rules for these keywords. There's an old rule that kind of we need to get back to now, and this is you should play with the rule that your character is allowed to be able to be used to pay for a cost for an ability. There's like characters in the cube, there's cards in the cube that specifically are going to look for this interaction. Not a lot of them, however, if they don't have access to being able to use themselves to pay for this cost, it will kind of make the card useless or make the character useless. So just be aware that you should still be able to commit your character to pay a cost for an ability, as well as being able to attack on the first turn. That is something that was real. That was very, very real. And that it's, somebody could theoretically, like, okay, we're going to game 3 in Swiss and there's only a couple minutes left, but I'm an extremely aggressive character and I'm going to play, some cards that'll give me check bonuses and things of that nature to kind of cheat in some foundations and then kind of go off from there on turn 1. It was completely doable, so you do need to keep that in mind. One other thing is the way that first was used, or the first like tag before an ability. So the new ability right here is a first enhance is only playable if you haven't tried to play any other enhances this enhanced step. Okay, and that means you could pass or whatever. But the original wording for it used to be enhance inform abilities may be preceded by the word first, and this means that if you wish to play the ability, it must be played as the first ability of the step or the phase that it is playable in. So it's got to be the first ability done in whatever step or phase that it's going to be checking in, as opposed to being the first one that a player activates. This is, once again, characters and cards were designed with that old interaction in mind. So when you are playing, keep in mind first has to actually be first. It can't be first for that player. It has to be first for that step or phase. Another thing to look at here is split cards. Split cards were kind of cool. They kind of fused the two types together, obviously, and this is before backups, so it was kind of a de facto different card type, even though it was treated as the same card types. The official tournament rules for splits cards, just so we have them figured out another way, is when a player attempts to play a split card, they must decide which side they're attempting to play it as. A split card is treated as if it were only that half of the card, so long as it is in the player's card pool or staging area. If a split card is added to your card pool or staging area for any reason, then you must decide which half is added in the same way. And so a little more clarification here, but basically if it's in the card pool or in the stage, you will have had to have chose like what it is, but otherwise when it's in your discard pile, when it's in your deck, when it's in your momentum, any other zone, it counts as being both of those. There's going to be like a card, I think, or two that recognize, like, or ask us to figure out if it's a split card or anything like that specifically. There's about 30, 35 of them in the cube in total in this first draft. So just be aware they do exist, but they are a lot of fun. Most of them have really good broken abilities on them too, so just keep that in mind. The draft itself, using the rules from the current kind of modern updated rule set, is fine. As long as we're getting to 40 cards minimum, 5 cards per cycle, then we're playing and we're enjoying it. Resource chaining is a very real thing in Legacy. However, in a cube draft scenario, you're not going to be really playing with resource chaining in the first place. It doesn't matter. Just get a cool thing and play it. That's really what we want to do here. One thing that I would like to say here is that I think, and this is even with modern draft rules, I think that removing 5 during a cycle is entirely too much. I think that number should be 3. And personally, anytime I would play in like a draft like this, I always pitched it. Most people don't go for it, but I personally think that could be a good way to go. And then before you kind of we get off the rule train here and we kind of get into the fun stuff here, keep in mind that a lot of cards in here have been issued erratas. A lot of cards in this cube have been banned at one point or banned completely out of the game. It's fine for them to exist sometimes as just like one copies of, or if you have all of them, then it can be very overwhelming and create a negative play experience. But just keep in mind that some things may be changed, some things may have an errata. There's not a lot for the cube, but there is an actual list for it, and I'll actually have the list for it, all this stuff, all these resources together in the description. Right away, draft packs are going to be a little bit different because we're going to build off of a rather recent change to character distribution in the pack. Because up until recently, I do believe it was like one of the middling or kind of later My Hero Academia sets, you weren't guaranteed a pack in your booster for sealed play. This meant you either did not get a viable character to use, or you did get a character in your pack, but it was in the place of an uncommon, rare, or ultra rare card. And yes, that is a thing. Back in the Legacy days, you could only get a character in your foil slot outside of a starter deck. So your rare slot would be taking it up by a character. If you already have it, it's completely dead rare. Like, you know, and there are versions of characters as well too. So you ideally would like to get one of them, but there's a good chance you just got a dead card if you open up plenty of the pack. This is also a time when God packs existed in the game. So you could open up a pack and it was supposed to be 10 foils for you, and it's a great time, but it could be 5 characters once again that you had all of already. So your treasure trove is just like a bunch of bad duplicates. So to solve this problem, UVS Games created kind of this character slot in the packs to make sure that anytime you open a booster pack, you always get 1 character. In a sealed environment, ideally you're getting 6, I believe, in the packs. So that way, everybody has a really kind of some equal footing there. I think that this is one of the best changes for the game in all 20 years of its lifetime, and it's one thing that I actually focused on pretty hard when I was making this cube, because I realized very quickly if I only packed one character into every single draft pack, we were going to get a very, very, very small snapshot of how many characters were running wild in Legacy, and that just doesn't really I don't think it really does it justice. We're trying to show off some cards here. So one suggestion that was kind of like pitched to kind of solve this, and there's always been a lot of things, but like you doing a character draft beforehand and stuff, and that's just like, I think that draws out things too much. It just adds too much complication to something. So there really hasn't been like a real viable option until this character slot thing has shown up, but it doesn't showcase enough characters. So what we can do here is just, turn the character slot idea, crank it up a couple notches of logic. So what that means is the draft pack is going to have your normal 10 cards, and this is going to be your random mix of actions, assets, attacks, and foundations. Remember, no backups. Each draft pack will also include your character slot, but your character slot is going to be 3 cards instead of 1, which means every single pack you'll get 13 cards, 10 playables, and then 3 characters that you can choose from here. The idea behind this is that I can kind of fit more characters in there, but then I can also have a little bit more fun with some things going on there. So you can get this character pack with 3 different characters, or you can get what I'm just kind of calling a build pack here. The build pack is still going to feature 3 cards, but they're going to be geared specifically towards certain play styles that existed back then. Your stacker characters are going to get additional copies so that their stacking abilities can be turned on, and then some characters are actually going to get copies of actions that they need to turn their game plan on. There's also like a win condition that's just 3 cards not tied to any character at all whatsoever that's going to be existing because of this expanded kind of character slot. This means that I can now add in over 120 characters to the cube, meaning that everybody is going to have a wide variety of players from their draft packs, but also they're going to get to see a lot of cool characters that just existed, and really hopefully make people think hard about who they want to play as they're drafting things out. Keep in mind too that a lot of characters were printed a lot of times just because of popularity, so inevitably a few characters have multiple versions of themselves. You can stack characters much like you can in retro. Same kind of rules apply. It's got to have the same matching name and stuff, but be aware that there are some characters like Taki and Taki from Soul Calibur 3 and Soul Calibur 4 who are not stackable. You can only stack characters from the same kind of franchise and license and things. So otherwise things would get very, very out of control. So keep that in mind. You're going to have 13 cards now here, at 3 characters at least, or 3 some really fun stuff to work with here. And now I think we have kind of all the cool stuff out of the way here, so we can actually now jump into the cube. With the character slot kind of expansion fresh in our heads here, let's take a look at some of the characters who made the cube here. So characters were picked based on a couple different criteria: performance at major events, power level at local events, unique abilities, some cards that just simply have connections to modern ones. Since we have so many cards to fill into the character slots now, there's a wide array of those abilities, archetypes, and character statistics to choose from in general. One character who is in the cube but does not appear on UVS Ultra is Zangief 4. Zangief 4 was released, but just for some reason there wasn't a copy of them printed anywhere. I do have a copy of this character, and I will include a link to this card in the description. Make sure to check out the expanded stats on all these characters as well too, which I think is really cool. You'll notice that they have 4 different ones, including blood type, and the stats do matter, so just keep that in mind. If you're playing constructed legacy things, some of the characters like Dimitri from Darkstalkers specifically cares about blood type and gender, which is super cool. The card the set that has the most representation here is actually going to be Street Fighter with 40 characters in it. Penny Arcade only has one character in it. It's actually Tycho, and Tycho is extremely good. And since there are only two characters in Penny Arcade actually also simultaneously has the most representation with half the characters being in it. Shadow War characters, there are some pretty cool ones in here, but there are some who have been reprinted. Zhao Dayu and Temujin, you're going to use the most recent printing of them. Zai Mei, I will say use the original printing. That's what we'll be having here in the cube. The nerf that Zai Mei got absolutely took her off the board, and she was very, very strong. But I think she was also a product of her symbols being extremely good as well too. So that's just kind of one thing to be aware of. There's going to be a couple characters in here who seem to kind of do nothing. Well, like here's one right here. Most notably, Kirishiro and Gil are going to kind of do this thing where they just have a really good symbol spread, and then they get to draw a bunch of cards all the time. Kirishiro can say, I'm a 12 hand size character, and I'm going to try to kill you with that 12 hand size or get ahead. So just something to kind of be aware of. You will notice right away too, kind of at the top of the key here, we had our three characters. Those are actually our stacker characters. Those Cody 3, Kazuya Mishima, and Jin Kazama, those characters are going to really flourish when they have additional copies of them. So I made sure that we had two in there for people to kind of take a look at. Donovan, this is a character who is really needs that being able to commit a character to play for the ability, so that you know, he can kind of shut things off as needed to when going a second or going first. It's a very important thing to have because of how the gameplay works for him. There are a lot of characters here. There's some really cool ones. As I go through this Waldo won Nationals on Mill that Yunsung has broken. There's just like so much cool stuff in here. 12 is going to be a character who's going to actually get 2 copies of action cards. 12 is actually going to get X copy, so that 12 can function as 12 if you play Street Fighter 3. 12 is kind of the clone character who does clone stuff. So the other thing too is that I kind of look at this 823. The other thing too is that a lot of these characters, like I said, a lot of them have like major experience or just like really good and competitive, but I find myself very lucky to have played in a time when a lot of people were playing a lot of different kind of things and a lot of different formats and a lot of different fun stuff going on, or trying a lot of things, even if it didn't end up being super competitive. People were able to just kind of like, hey, I'm going to run this, or I'm going to run that, or I'm going to try this with this character. Like, this character exists and is really on the table. So, yeah, just like, I'm very happy to say I saw a lot of these decks, and they absolutely crushed me at tables, either at locals or like big, like, they're called like a local championship now, but back in the day, there were a whole list of different things. So that's how you actually got a lot of these characters here too. So we're not going to make it through all of them, but we will end on the best character in this entire game at all, and he needs to be printed into oh no, we're not going to do that. He needs to be printed into let's just get here. He needs to get printed into Standard and Hero 2 and Super Retro, and bring back Legacy just for him, Rock Howard 2. So let's now move into action cards, and we got a lot of the characters out of the way here. Action cards were just as powerful as they kind of are today. There's some really good abilities on them, but the thing about it is that a lot of them really didn't clear themselves from their card pool. So you would have like this like really cool ability, but you would have to factor in, okay, this is going to provide progressive difficulty for a long time, and because of that, it kind of just, you get to a spot where you don't really want to play them because it's kind of an additional hidden cost on there, unless it's like a low difficulty. There were still like a few that did clear themselves from your card pool, but it's not necessarily like good enough all the time. And like I said, with 12, there are going to be 2 actions cards that do come in for 12's build. The same is for Ivy from Soul Calibur 4. Soul Calibur 4 Ivy will get 2 copies of switching weapon styles, which has an IV form on it, and then there's also a form ability on there that anybody can use. And in theory, somebody could get the IV build pack and then put those cards into a different deck that is an IV. And frankly, more power to them. At that point, I don't think it's that great of an ability that I would try to splash for it. But if you want to go for it, and realistically, if you have a bunch of like good weapons that you can use for the form, then you should just probably play IV. So that's something to be aware of. 12 is a little bit more different. 12's character card or action card is character only. It's only playable by 12. This is something that was very, very popular in Legacy back in the day. You'd get cards that specifically were character only, and this was a problem because you would open a card, but you didn't play that character or you didn't own that character, and now once again you realistically just had like another dead card in your hand, and that's not ideal because you want to be able to play everything that you open. So just keep that in mind when you take a look at some of these actions. There's a lot of really cool stuff. I try to talk about some of this fun stuff as much as I can, but a lot of people just kind of don't know about some of this stuff here. So yeah, I think honestly I picked out all the good actions for this format. So asset cards have always been a great type that kind of balance strong abilities, and the Legacy era is no different based on the 2 cards that I just showed here. A lot of assets, once again, were problems, and actions were the same way too, where if you have a lot of this stuff in multiple copies, it tends to get out of hand here. And this is when I feel like Sabretooth Games and Fantasy Flight kind of dropped the ball a little bit here, is that they didn't really take a lot of action very quickly on their cards. You could issue a unique to a lot of things here that were just never issued unique. A lot of things they tried to give erratas to kind of keep things functionally working, but it just didn't really do anything. So in a constructed format where you're trying to fix Legacy, you're trying to make Legacy more playable, unique is very, very important to helping curb powers. But yeah, I think a lot of these cards in general in a cube, they are just strong enough already. And I think there's a lot of cool, I feel like personality, like I said, there's character cards or character only ability cards that exist, and I feel like those do a good job of describing what the gameplay designers wanted to do. But the assets, I think, have, because of their inherent abilities that are just on them, they're going to kind of help show off a little bit more personality, in my opinion, of like abilities. It's a very weird concept, I know, but believe me, it makes sense in my head, and it should make sense in your head too. This right here, Seal of Cessation, this card is insane here. There's actually some cards here that didn't make the cut. There's a card called Soul Hive, and it's a QB asset, and it's an alternate win condition from Darkstalkers, and it's a good way to like throw an alternate win con in, but I felt like her alternate win cons were just like kind of super underpowered, so it's not worth it. There is a card here that's coming up, and it is a lot of fun here, and it's called Close to the Edge. You're gonna get 3 of these in a build pack, and this can be played as an alternate win condition. So just be aware of that if you want to have that option on the table. It's a lot of fun here. And finally, this is actually one of the only card types, I believe, that has profanity on it. So good old Penny Arcade bringing in the webcomic charm for us here. But yeah, and by the way, this card, once again, completely playable, and I've had it absolutely ruin my stage before. So yeah, assets are also like in a really good spot in this queue. So attacks and foundations are definitely the 2 most kind of like jarring changes in design philosophy from the Legacy era. It's jarring in a good way though, because you'll find out that attacks in the Legacy era very quickly were ignored because they are how bad they were, or they were completely overpowered, with not a lot of cards in the attack aspect really making up the middle ground here. There really wasn't a mid-range necessarily. Most attacks during this time too checked a 2, like straight up. There was just an absurd amount of 2 control attacks everywhere, and meaning that like if you had 3 control attacks, like that was just automatically like better. Like you would play more, like 9 times out of 10 you were going to try to play mostly 3 control attacks, and because of that you ended up playing like the same, you saw the same, everybody played the same attacks over and over and over because of the stats like kind of needing to dictate it. um, and this was like one piece of the puzzle that kind of helped contribute to the idea of like this Grey Wars plan, where you're like, okay, well, all these attacks are kind of like understated, so what I'm going to do is just use a bunch of really broken and strong abilities to kind of create this game state to where I'm one-shotting you or like killing you on one turn through like 2 or 3 attacks, as opposed to what we kind of now have, which is like, oh hey, we get to play some attack and then block and then multiple turns and things like that. So that's just kind of something to be aware of. I touched on it earlier, the character only keyword. That ability is specifically, or not specifically, but it's found mostly on attacks, and I would say assets. It's a great way to kind of add personality and add charm to things, but it's not something that I wanted to really lean hard into and represent in this cube. The idea of that is that it's tough because you don't want to draft something and then not be able to play it completely. I feel like there's very quick, like the logic behind it here, is that like if you can like errata, if we can fix just only like every character only card actually doesn't mean that it can be played by whatever. It means that all the abilities in the text box can only be played by that character or something like that. If there's like some blanket errata we can do, that would be a great way to include these cards into the cube. But unfortunately, I don't think we're really there at this point just yet to kind of doing that. I don't think there's enough people care about Legacy for that to be a thing, so just something to kind of be aware of. As we kind of go through here, attacks, we're not going to get through all of them here. We're going to do those in some other videos, but you'll notice that there are no character only cards or abilities in here, except for, you know, like what's in the build packs, like with Ivy and 12. But there's also like some that kind of comes circle around and bites you a little bit here. There's 2 cards specifically that I know old players are going to be like, how do you want to take a snapshot of Legacy without these 2 very important attacks? Where they're going to be Feline Spike and Tiger Fury. And those cards, if you read them as printed, because UVS Ultra has not a lot, but there's a fair amount of mistakes, and frankly that's fine. There's the mistakes in UVS Ultra, and Feline Spike actually has an errata, and so does Tiger Fury. Then both, the one is Felicia multiple 2 now as opposed to regular multiple 2, and Tiger Fury is only Sagat only, which means both of these cards have character only abilities on them, which means they're not qualified for the cube. And I kind of went back and looked at it, and these erratas were issued on June 1st, 2009, and this means like this was going into the Gen Con rotation kind of story time, and they got rotated a little bit early. But even then, after that rotation, there were errata forms for 73 days, I believe, which is more than enough time for everyone to kind of get it's over 2 months. It's like 2.5 months, I think, right off the top of my head. That's more than enough time for people to kind of remember those and establish those as having those erratas. The other thing too is that like Feline Spike, like I maybe will include it on draft 2 without the errata or something, or we'll figure out a way to get it in there. But Tiger Fury is a card that basically encouraged people to play Grey Wars even more. So that is definitely not that card being gone is great for me, right? in terms of showcase off Legacy. So that one's gone. Feline Spike is also gone too, but they deserve to be gone because they're just like really, they got changed for a reason. So that's super cool. Also, there's a lot of cool cards that I've gone off and shown through here. There's a card called Pommel Smash, and believe me when I say the stats on it, you're like, okay, whatever, but that card was absolute church for people. So is this card, Moonsault Slayer. This is like just, oh, let me look at your hand, get rid of your high block, and then multiple out if you don't have anything else. Like, yeah, just insanely good. Finally, we're going to end with the other card type that was changed so much philosophy, like jarring philosophy-wise here, and that is going to be foundations. Um, so foundations were the focal point of strong abilities. Like that's just straight up what it was. Every symbol had multiple stable foundations that you were going to play, and with resource chaining existing and constructed at that time, which is like is a tune kind of that version these days, whatever. Um, you would see like pretty much on like people would splash cards that shared like a lot of your foundations you played shared like two symbols with your character, so you could splash for these other powerful cards. So if you were on like a Yoga Mastery symbol, you would just splash for Yoga Mastery. And yeah, it's just kind of like yeah, it's just terrible. It created this thing where like once again your attacks aren't strong enough, and so how are you going to solve that problem? You're going to bump up the power level of foundations, and there's no deadlock that existed here, which meant that you would just build out a stage of like 20 to 30 cards, and with those cards you would just play this chess match of abilities back and forth while you're resolving one big attack that realistically will just like either do half of your opponent's life or all of it in just one go. So it was pretty awful at times because of the design philosophy there. But the kind of changes going after we got out of the Fantasy Flight Games era, we got into the Jasco Games era, things got a lot better. You have a lot more of that attack and block game style coming in, understanding of what abilities are really broken, what abilities are kind of overlooked, or how do we bump these up. So yeah, foundations, you will notice they get to do a lot of, they can commit characters, they can do all sorts of fun stuff, and yeah, foundations are pretty insane. There are some really cool things in here we're probably not going to get to as we just kind of take a look and brush through some of them quickly, but there's a one control foundation in here. It's actually split. It's called Disciple of War, and it's the only extra turn ability ever printed in Universus history, I believe. Cards Blind Stance, Gyarados' Leadership, and Silent Step, those are all non-split foundations that check a 3 or less. They just straight up check a 3 or less. The ability should ideally be good enough to do it. Clones and Demon Hunting. Now these are cards that check higher up than a 3, and this is the first time that we had attacks that checked higher than a 3. And this was actually, these were seen in the sets for Street Fighter Dark Path and Soul Calibur 3 Soul Arena, which are actually also the first sets to have watermarks on them. Those watermarks helped signal to you what was going to be a part of rotation. We had the 3-point, the 4-point, and then 5. 6, I believe, was under Jasco, and then they got rid of them completely. We're just going to do set images with like Darkstalkers and stuff, and from there, yeah, I think it just works better too. The Kata Shuriken watermark is, it's pretty cool. Don't get me wrong, but this is, I don't know, it feels like we have just a lot of like hot topic design for a lot of this stuff. But it is 2006, 2007 we're looking at here. These cards right here, these are actually, these cards are playable by anybody at a queue, which is really strong. But they're all what's called Foundations of Power. It was a specific tournament to get these. You had to play a deck that was built on this symbol, kind of your main symbol. And then, yeah, if you won the tournament, you got like 2 play sets of those, or 1 play sets of those, because prize support promos and stuff like that were not exactly great. So just something to kind of be aware of. Look at also this card right here. This is some amazing momentum. It shows you just how absurd momentum generation was in kind of modern universes these days. Momentum is very honest, I would say, but this is the kind of stuff that would just ran rampant. And that's the cube. The total number of cards means it's built for a maximum of 8 players, but any amount of players, kind of 3 upwards, it should be able to function and find. Once again, you could find a description for the cube, the UVS Ultra link, and an image for the missing Zangief promo card. If you're a legacy collector or player, you have these cards on hand, I sincerely encourage you to kind of put this together and play it with your friends and make adjustments, put in the characters you like or whatever here, but just kind of do it and see what everybody thinks. And if you're not somebody who has access to these cards, once again, use that proxy button and have some fun. I definitely, if you started kind of in the retro era, like Jasco era on forward, and you already don't have these cards, I I'll be honest with you, it's probably not the best endeavor for you to hunt these down unless you specifically like the IPs or anything like that. It's just the cards have been like ignored by ownership companies. A lot of them have never gotten reprints, save for like I think maybe less than a handful of cards. So unless things change immensely from UVS Games ownership, and once again, I like this is only because of how hard this equipment, this is all of this these cards are to find and everything like that. The proxy button might just be the kind of the best way to go, but I do recommend that you do it. You do print some stuff out. You enjoy it, or you put the decks together with physical cards. It's great. It's fantastic. I really hope that if you can, you do draft this cube, and you let me know if there's anything related to UVS Legacy or anything. Please reach out. You can find me here at Rival Stage Gaming, or you can find me on Discord at Nick Marvelous. And really, like, it's just about fun with this. The cards in this cube, they're going to be fun for any seasoned veteran, depending on what era you play, or like it does not depending on what era you play in. I really hope that if you're a newer player, you can kind of glean something cool from it, or see like some cool archetypes, or have some fun with it. And if you're an old player, I hope it can rekindle some memories, and put a smile on your face and have a good time playing with these cards that unfortunately we all kind of just let sit in our closets right now and currently. Also to touch on that, if you're like an older like Legacy era player, or like an older Jasco era player, or I mean honestly, if you're any player of any era of this game at all whatsoever, you're part of this community, like that's kind of why I want to keep this stuff going, is because the community is so good, and the community is the type of community that is willing to learn and willing to put themselves and immerse themselves in this game, because this game does have a lot of depth and there is a lot going on, and any tools and any piece of knowledge that you can get to apply it to modern Universus, if you're a content creator, if you're a competitive player, if you're a casual player, if you're a tournament organizer, it's always kind of cool to look at. In my opinion, it's always kind of cool to look at stuff like this and say, hey, that's what this is, or wow, that's really cool here. You can take a look at a couple characters and go, oh wow, well, this character, that's Genkai now. that's okay, that's how that worked out. So yeah, it's just it's great. And I think that if I can get you together with your friends in person to kind of sit down and draft some Legacy Universes, then my mission has been accomplished. There's going to be some other videos kind of going a little bit more in depth on the cards individually, because there's a lot in here. It's built for 8 players, 6 packs with a bunch of characters built on top of it. So we'll be able to do a little bit more of a deep dive later, but for now, take a look at the cube. Let me know what you think. I love feedback. Thank you. Like and subscribe here, Rival Stage Gaming. And to quote Universal Fighting System, anyone, anytime, anywhere.